Make Alive with me, your host Laura, and our special guest, Officer Zachary Hippolyte. Rape. We're talking about investigating rape. And in the break, I was talking to Officer Zachary, and we were sharing some of our experiences, and he was telling me about some of the eccentricities that manifest within victims of rape. And I was sharing my experience. I had a cousin who at the tender age of 10 who was raped, and she's never recovered. You know, she's in her late 30s and she's never recovered. And he was telling me about some of the things that have happened. Share with us some of those eccentricities that manifests itself with rape victims, and how the vulnerable persons team help in investigating rape.
You know, unless you really have the opportunity to interview a rape victim, you'll not really understand what this offense could do to an individual. The vulnerable persons team, viewers, this is a unit within the Royal Sunshine Police Force who are trained, and the responsibility is to investigate sexual offenses, whether it be rape, unlawful sexual connection, bestiality, to name a few. And these officers, mind you, they experience like you said, the different form of eccentricities that a victim can go through. Just today, as I was doing my research and interviewing one of the officers there, she informed me that there is a particular victim. She was raped 7 years ago. And up to this day, she comes to the office and just sits down there. Maybe it's her way of finding comfort. There are victims who they develop this form of paranoia. There's this victim that once she hears anything like a loud noise, she's jumpy, she's looking around, thinking. And it's like 10 years since that occurrence. But up to now, once she hears an alarming noise, she believes that her attacker is coming back for her. And this is very serious. The vulnerable persons team, even the officers who work there, they are emotionally stressed. I mean, think of it. Day in and day out, most times, you have to sit down and listen to those horror stories. You sometimes even, because you're human, and you sometimes put yourself in the shoes of the victim. The officers of the vulnerable persons team, they have to find ways to debrief themselves and find ways to cope with their stress. And I'm telling you, Laura, it is not easy. It is not easy on them. But yet, they know they have a job to do, and they handle it professionally. They handle it with the utmost of care, and they're very serious about taking care of victims. But I tell you, Laura, I don't know if you'll ever have an opportunity one day to interview a rape victim, but this is a life-changing event in any human being, whether you're male or female. And we in the Royal Sunshine Police Force, we wish we had the superhuman power to literally eradicate it, but we can't. But what we can do is try our best to educate, to empower, and to in some ways also to educate the would-be offenders. If you believe you have a problem, if you believe you have an issue, if you cannot control yourself, you need to seek help. You need to seek help. And there are lots of, when you look at it in terms of investigating, there are lots of little challenges for the vulnerable persons team. And I'm going to speak about one right now, because even when I found out about it, I was a little shocked. When someone comes to the vulnerable persons team and they make a report, the very first thing that must be done is that victim must be taken to the Victoria Hospital for medical treatment. Laura, would you believe me if I told you there is no special priority for victims of rape at the said hospital? So therefore, if you're number 150, you shall wait.
And at that point, if the rape has just occurred, you still have his scent on you, and that feel. And I mean, if it's a man, there's bodily fluids and there's all these kinds of things, and you have to sit there dealing with that and being raped in your mind. I would imagine over and over and over again. And that I'm thinking about it, and I'm getting chills just thinking, what must the victim feel like just waiting?
Yeah, and it also poses a challenge for the investigations. I'll give you an example. Because the police has to visit the scene of the crime. Sometimes the police will not know the scene. It will be the victim. You understand what I'm saying?
Now has
so
to
therefore,
revisit.
and not just that, we're looking at time frame, because the longer it takes for you to visit the scene, anything could happen.
You lose.
The offender could
Yes.
come back to the scene and get rid of evidence. And so I understood that a couple of months or probably years ago, there was this type of agreement or policy at the Victoria Hospital where the vulnerable persons team members and also victims of rape would receive priority, special treatment. But somehow along the years or months, that has just disappeared. And we're hoping, the vulnerable persons team is hoping that somehow in the near future, this could be rectified. Yes, we do understand, I guess, the limitations probably of the hospital, but we cannot continue to have victims of rape. For example, sometimes, okay, a while ago you spoke about the scent and all this stuff still being on the victim. There are victims who bathe.
And yes, I was coming to that because I know a friend of mine was telling me about her experience with her good friend, and no matter what she tried to tell her, the first thing she did was, even while she's pulling her out of this, she just wanted to get that scent off. She just wanted to get scrub her skin. If she could have crawled out of her skin, she would have. And I could imagine that would be your first reaction. You've been violated.
That's right.
And so you just want to get it off, but then that's the worst thing you could do because you lose valuable DNA. Now, that comes to the question, the crime lab is closed. What happens with the DNA? And I understand there was a breach of security, so all the DNA in there, what happens?
Presently, the Victoria Hospital is providing the services when it comes to that aspect.
But we know that the Victoria Hospital is so limited in what they can do resource-wise.
In a limited manner. And until the crime lab issue is rectified, that is what we have. And what I was going to say earlier is, you have a victim who has bathed herself or himself, whatever the case may be. All right, we cannot forget the men.
Yeah, but you see, we tend to say female because they're the ones who are reporting and the men aren't. So it's very... So excuse us, men, if you've been raped out there, if we seem to be discriminating against you, it's simply because the men do not report the rape. And so it's easy for us to give a gender to rape because it's the women who stand up and report. So please bear with us. We're not discriminating against you.
So then you have this situation, and you're looking at the type of rape was not forceful, so there's no marks of violence, whatever. And then you're waiting there almost 5 hours, 6 hours, 7, 8 hours, only to get a referral to a community health center. That has happened many times to victims of rape. and the members of the vulnerable persons team.
So what we should be agitating for and advocating for would be policy, laws put in our statutes giving priority to those persons who
That's
have
right.
been. You can't go to the hospital, you've been raped, and sit there for 3, 4, 5
Yeah.
hours. I mean, so many things can happen. I mean,
In my opinion, it's just not logical. And that's also one of the issues sometimes why victims of rape do not want to pursue a prosecution in court. That's one of the reasons. They
which-
find it's a waste of their
it's a
time.
waste of their time.
Yeah.
So, which leads me to the question, how many cases of rape, reported rape, have been effectively investigated, detected, and prosecuted?
Okay. You see, the thing is, because of the length of time that I had to do my research, as you know, it was just earlier this morning I received your sample set of questions. One would appreciate that it takes a little while to compile the data. So the only data I have for you presently, according to our 2014 crime stats, for the year of 2014, there were 44 reports of rape. And for the year 2013, there were 50. Now, though I don't have the actual figures in terms of the detection rate, but I could tell you, when it comes to that offense, the detection rate is usually high. Because most times, the victim knows the offender.
So
Most
it's a
times.
myth that a rapist is this ghoulish figure in the dark.
Looking in the dark and you have no idea who he is. Yeah. It happens. You're not saying it doesn't happen. It does.
But most times,
But most times,
it's somebody you know.
the reason why our rape reports have a very high detection rate is because the victim knows the offender.
I was reading a case study. It's not a St. Lucian case study, but it could happen anywhere, where this girl was raped and she reported it. She was at a party. She had had alcohol to drink. She had gone into the bedroom with this person, with this guy, and he raped her there. And she reported it. And in the investigation, the investigating officer asked her whether she was forced into the room. She says no. She said, "Were you forced to drink alcohol?" She said no. He said, when the rape began, did you say no? She said yes. I said no at least 4 times. He did not stop. He paid me no mind. So it was obvious to the investigating officer that she said no, she meant no, and she knew that she was being violated. She was being taken against her will. Investigating the guy, he says he didn't force her. First of all, he denied that he had ever had sex with her. Then when they told him that they have witnesses, he said yes, he had sex with her, but he didn't force her into the room. She came willingly. And though she said no, he did not know that she meant no, because she came into the room willingly.
Doesn't matter.
And so, you know, he was charged and brought to court. But the thing is, and we heard all the time, we heard in the country and Western songs, we heard all the time, the rape culture dictates that when a woman says no, she does not really mean no. What does the law say?
No, well, we need to dispel that myth, that type of saying, this type of culture. St. Lucia, if you're in a relationship, and this is very serious, no matter the level of the relationship, casual, close, committed, as long as your partner says no, end your activity.
Whether it's husband and wife, girlfriend and boyfriend, casual friends, just met, you drunk out of your mind, once you say no.
Well, you know, the husband-wife thing, there's a little twist to it.
Talk to me about that. Because
I knew you'd say that.
You would know that the last time we had a heated conversation with one of our viewers, you know, that a husband cannot rape his wife.
A husband cannot rape his wife. A husband cannot rape his wife, Laura. I will read from subsection 3 of section 1 to 3 of the Criminal Code of St. Lucia. And it states, a husband commits the offense of rape where he has sexual intercourse with his wife without her consent by force, fear, or the use of a drug or thing with intent to stupefy or overpower her, where there is in existence in relation to them a decree nisi of divorce or nullity granted under Divorce Act number 2 of 1973, b a decree of judicial separation granted under the Civil Code, c a separation agreement or where the parties are in fact separated, or d a peace-binding order or an order for the husband not to molest his wife or have sexual intercourse with her, including a protection order from the family court. Ms. Pierre, if I have to use the term, this term loosely, when you're married, I have acquired a license to have sex with you.
Likewise the woman.
Likewise the woman.
Right.
Okay, I've acquired a license to have sex with you.
And we're not disputing
that.
No,
we're not disputing that. You need to give it to me.
Yes.
You have to give it to me. All right? However, what the law is saying there is that, for example, okay, let's give an example. We're married. I come home and I would like to have sexual intercourse with you. We have no issues, you have no problems. What?
There's no degree of separation.
Degree of separation whatsoever. And you say no. And I still have sex with you. You may feel violated. In your mind, you are violated, and you make a report to the police. The police will take what the law says into consideration. Also, the police will also take the circumstances. Was it forceful? Have you been injured whatsoever? As long as these circumstances don't exist, the police will not investigate a case of rape against me.
So you're saying, so the law is saying, therefore, that a woman has no control over her body where her husband is concerned, and that the law is on because, well, I'll tell you something. Call me old-fashioned if you want, but how I can rape you and for me to hurt you? You realize genetically, biologically, we're different. And so you're poking me forcefully, you're jamming me. If I take my pen and I jam you, I'm going to leave a hole, I'm going to hurt you, I'm going to mark you because I'm jamming this into you. Likewise, so but unless I am hurt and you can see marks of violence on my body.
Yeah. If I cause harm to you, Laura, we're not saying that the police gonna take action. Okay? Because there are other offenses that could be used. But according to the law, a husband or wife
they have no rape.
Yeah,
but could I argue could I argue
exist.
Physical abuse?
Yes, definitely.
So there are other ways.
Yes, there are other ways
to circumvent.
Yes, there are other ways.
Circumvent. So the gentleman was still wrong of last week because we weren't talking about cordial relations.
Yes, I heard him. We
were talking about there was some sort of separation, divorce, annulment, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but we're saying that. But you're saying that if there is cordial relations, you just came home and say, whip out your license and say, tonight, whether you want to or not, you could have headache, bellyache, you could be on your period, you could be whatever, I'm taking it tonight, unless he has hurt you physically. He hasn't raped you. And even if he's hurt you physically, he still hasn't raped you, but he has physically abused you. So there are other offenses. Now, these other offenses, do they carry the same weight as rape?
No.
Are they more less?
No, they don't carry the same.
They're less stringent?
Yeah, they're less stringent. Yeah.
It sucks to be a woman.
And a man. Because let's not forget.
It sucks to be a woman.
Let's not forget.
And I'm serious. And I'm serious because at the end of the day, I mean, guys, I'm not diminishing that you can be raped. But seriously, there's a reason why.
We're not advocating here. We're not advocating or condoning any husband for I mean, at the end of the day, you know your wife, she's a human being. If your wife says no, in my opinion, if you love her, you'd accept that and you leave it alone. Okay? So we're telling the men out there, don't make your wife uncomfortable by putting her in such a position and then say, yeah, I rape you.
After all, a happy wife is a happy life.
Or something like, or because you're my wife, so you're now one with me according to the law. You must give me sex. You must have sexual intercourse with me. We're asking husbands, no, that is not the way, and that's not the thinking at all. But until the powers that be sees it fit, this is what the law says.
Women, we need to advocate for that law to change, because that ain't making no sense. That's really, it's just not making sense. Okay? I said no. I can have an argument with you. Why can't I say no and for you to respect that?
Yeah, it's really amazing. It's just amazing how the institution of marriage is looked upon. So, for example, I'm at home with my common law girlfriend, common law wife. Okay, she's not married to me according to the state. Okay, and we're on the bed, and then she told me, no, I don't want to have sex, and yet I proceeded. No force, no nothing. I could be arrested for rape. But the wife...
So are you making a case against the sacrament of matrimony, officer? Are you saying that married women are at a disadvantage to non-married women?
No, but according to the law, that's what it appears to be.
It
because
so.
I will be arrested.
And charged.
The moment that consent has been taken away, I shall be arrested and charged for rape. But if it's my wife, in the very same circumstance, no, I cannot be charged for rape.
Now, I mean, all good and well, so we have advocacy to do. We have some serious advocacy to do. But what percentage of detected rapes are actually prosecuted?
Well, also, I was not able to compile that data. As one would know, it would take some time to actually compile that data. But for the limited time that I had this morning to do the research, I was not able to actually get that percentage for you. But yeah, that is something I still want to
which is
which
is why vulnerable persons should be here.
Yes.
And you know, it's unfortunate that they couldn't be here, because I tried to get them. It's like a couple of weeks now, but you know, it's unfortunate that they're unable to be here, and we can quite understand if they have a heavy workload and whatnot. Their priority would be to the victims and not.
Definitely.
But this is very important, because the information that they could give us could very well determine whether a man goes out there and rapes, or whether a woman reports the rape. So we need to know that kind of information. So we probably will have to have you back, or you know, implore the vulnerable persons team to come on and give us that valuable information, which we really need. So we were saying we're not sure, so we're going to have to follow up on that. Falsely reporting rape.
Yes.
Is that a prevalent thing? Do we have a lot of that going on? Like a lot of men and women, and because the men are not reporting rape, I would assume that all the false claims that you would be getting is from women.
I won't say it's prevalent. I won't say it's prevalent, but it does happen.
It does happen.
It does happen.
And what's the penalty for that?
Well, the thing is that it's like any other offense. I'll read here again also from the Criminal Code. Section 511 of the Criminal Code, entitled Wasting of Police Time, states, any person who A, makes a report to the police about the alleged commission of a crime which he or she has reasonable cause to believe is false, or B, knowingly makes to the police a false report tending to show that a crime has been committed, or to give rise to apprehension for the safety of any person or property, or tending to show that he or she has information material to any police inquiry, commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $1,000 or imprisonment for 1 year.
So you've made a false claim.
A very serious claim.
A person's life is ruined or in tatters, at the very least.
Yes.
And the penalty is $1,000?
Penalty is $1,000. Or 1 year imprisonment.
Now we want to be fair. If we're going to come down hard on rapists for raping, what's the maximum penalty for raping?
Life.
Life.
Life in jail.
Life imprisonment.
Life imprisonment.
Well, bravo.
Life
Because
imprisonment.
I am one who believes
life.
that when a woman has been raped or a person has been raped, that person's life is effectively over.
Yeah,
The
so it's life
person you
imprisonment.
were before the rape is just not, you're not there anymore. You're gone.
I agree
And
with
a
that.
shell is in its place.
Yes.
So bravo, life. But if we are saying that we're going to come down on rapists, shouldn't we come down? Well, I mean, shouldn't the penalty be a little stiffer for
In my opinion,
ruining some, because it's malicious.
in my opinion, it should be.
Unless, of course, sorry for cutting
That's
you
okay.
off, but unless, of course, it was a mistaken identity. So you looked somebody else who looks like you, and I thought it was you, and I said it was you, and I'm convinced because I in doing my research, I found a case like that where this woman accused this man of he's a white woman. There was a serial rapist out, and she was raped. And she said it was this man, this black man. And the man said no. But because he had had run-ins with the law in the past, minor stuff, you know, he was accused and he was charged and he was brought to court and he was found guilty. And he went to jail. And while he was in jail, that was a very popular case. It made a lot of headlines and whatnot. There was another woman who had been raped, and she said he was the one who did it. And in all of his appeals, he found out while in prison, about 3 or 4 years into his prison sentence, he had been given 10 years. And while in prison after 3 or 4 years, constantly doing those appeals, he found that there was a guy in prison that he was always mistaken for.
I see.
And that guy had said to some other prison inmate, this guy was the guy who's originally convicted of the rape, is actually doing time for him.
Wow.
So that other inmate, the third person repeated that, and so he now called his lawyers. To make a long story short, he appealed, and he went to court again. But now he's going to court. There's a second victim who's saying he's the one. He lost the appeal, and he was stacked on 5 more years onto his original prison sentence. At the time the rape had happened, there was no DNA testing. But while he's in prison, after 10 years, there was another victim that in another area where it was a cold case. They had not found out who the person was who had raped that victim. And in reopening that cold case, they found out that that semen matched not the person who was put in, but that other guy who had said,
I see.
And then they found out that the other 2 women were not raped by the person they accused. They were raped by this other person. But when you look at the 2 persons, they look similar. And so these women now have to live with themselves. One particular woman, the first accuser, couldn't live with herself, and she just wanted to die. So there's that. There's the natural mistaken identity. But we're talking about the malicious intent to ruin a person because you didn't get your way.
Yes, and it has happened. And not just that. When you look at also the police resource, because you've just taken away the time and attention of a police officer for a false matter who should be concentrating on some other individual that was actually raped. So all this should be, factored in, but as the law has it, it's just $1,000.
Yes, but not taken away from that, women, if you know you have not been raped and you're just maliciously trying to ruin somebody, please do not do it. Think about the other women who have legitimately been raped and who are going to be looked upon by members of our society as being malicious and as being fraudulent, because we know that the rape culture is very, very prevalent in St. Lucia. Notwithstanding that, you should still report your rape if you have been legitimately raped. We're due for a break. When we come back, more with our guest, and you now, St. Lucia, will have the opportunity to join in the conversation.